Hello, YouTube. How is everyone tonight? And welcome to another Maker's Mashup Tech Talk. Tonight we have a couple of people to join us tonight. The first one is Nick, and as you know, Nick, he is one of our Maker's Mashup team members. Also goes by Mechius in the Discord. And we've also got tonight Boss Hog, one of our MVPs in the Discord. How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing all right.
That was some real excitement there. Doing all right. Barely alive. Glad to be part of it.
Yeah, I've had a long week.
Yep. Your mic's just a little quiet, dude.
Is it? Okay.
So tonight we're gonna talk about 3D printing. It's gonna be the goal here is to maybe do a test print. I know I've heard a lot of questions from people about how to do a test print, how to calibrate printers. So maybe we'll run a test print tonight. But the other thing I wanted to do was talk about a lot of different 3D prints and 3D printer filament. So I've purchased for quite a long time now a lot of inexpensive filaments, but I've been lately trying to purchase some, I want to say, higher quality filaments, or filaments that are probably well north of the $20 price point in the US here. So I've been trying to experiment with some of those, just kind of see the different results, see if some of the more premium filaments are that much better and easier to print, or if they exhibit the same type of problem. So we're going to be talking about a little bit of that tonight. And then we're going to do some show and tell. Charles here, Boss Hog in our Discord, has got his some of his robotics he's going to be sharing with us tonight, which is very, very cool. And then we'll probably round out the night with just talking about different things that we're working on today. So with that, why don't we talk about some of these 3D prints? So I went to the Maker Faire this over this past weekend, and if you had checked out the Elkhorn Maker Faire, it was pretty cool. We had a booth there, and we were going over different things. But we were showing off a lot of different 3D prints this time around, whereas other times we've either focused on STEM or focused on putting out, like CNCs and different things out there for people to take a look at. But this time around, we kind of focused on 3D prints. So I wanted to share some of the 3D prints that we have there, and some of these prints that you may or may not be familiar with. like this Deadpool one. It's a really cool looking print. You would think that this would be difficult to print, but it's actually a fairly quick print if I don't drop it on the floor.
Hard to hold, apparently.
It's actually a fairly quick print to put together. And the other thing is that this was printed without supports. There's not one support in this entire model. And good model makers, people that can really make some fabulous models, can put together something like this, and you throw this on the printer, and it just prints. I mean, that's it. There's nothing to it. It gives pretty good quality. This was just at 0.2, so I didn't even really get down to a 0.1. 18 hours, so, you know, less than a day. And it's just out of some Salutech red 3D printer filament. I mean, nothing special here, but you would not believe how many people could not believe that this, one, was printed without supports, and then two, was, you know, printed on a 3D printer. It just, you know, just goes to prove how some of these 3D prints are really impressive. And if you've got a good model maker. Now, one of the other things, that I've got a failed print here, so this is a failed print, but we also showed off some of these prints like this turtle, where the legs move, the head moves, and this is printed as one piece, and it's by a company called Fab 365, and it prints like this on the printer. This is a Bender that was a failed print, but it prints like this on the printer, all the arms up. The arm was my failed print. The arm came out, but literally this folds up. Fold this up a little bit here. And, you know, it's Bender. You know, it's obviously a failed print, but that's pretty cool to just take it off the printer and fold it up. So we did a lot of cool stuff with 3D printers at the Maker Faire over the weekend. And I just felt like I thought I would share some of these different companies, because up until recently, I had seen prints like this, but I never really put any thought into where they came from, because I'm not a person that prints a lot of these models and that. But then I went out and checked out their website, and that Fab 365 has a lot of really, really cool stuff there. So thought it was, and then C-Dub 3D, one of our newest Patreon members, he's saying here that they have a lot of cool designs, and they did. If you are in our Discord, we have pictures of C-Dub had printed out the R2-D2 from Fab 365. So we'll talk about prints tonight, but I want to give Boss Hog the opportunity here, Charles here, to go over some of this really, really cool robotic stuff, because I know a lot of times we talk about 3D printing and electronics and that, but Mechius is very much, Nick here is into robotics. So I thought it'd be a great way for Charles here to kind of show off some of his work. So we'll give him the floor here, and he can go ahead and talk about some of that.
This one is a scaled down model of the Boston Dynamics Spot Mini. I got the plans from Thingiverse. It's all Arduino based.
You're a little quiet there, Charles. If you could speak up a little.
Hang on, let me fix that real quick.
Y'all set there?
Yeah, I'm good. But anyways, it was it's a scaled down model of Boston Dynamics Spot Mini. I got all the plans off of Thingiverse, and it's taken me between work and this about a month to get everything printed. But that's only working on it in the evenings though. It's all Arduino based. I haven't programmed it yet. Kind of been busy with work, but I also have the remote control. It's kind of a universal remote control for him and amongst other projects. I know you see the zip ties on it, holding it together. I'm just waiting on hardware to come in for that. But I'm a big hobbyist with it. I love the robotics.
So, what do you do with what other sort of robotics projects have you built, and what have you done with them? I mean, do you just take them out in the field and let them run around, or what sort of things do you do with it?
Pretty. I mean, just about anything. It's kind of a big kid toys. Like, I was always told the only difference between men and boys is the cost of the toys. Well, these get quite expensive. But I have a few helicopters that I have radio control that I play around with. It's more of a, I guess, the passion for the radio itself, for the most part.
Yep, that's very cool. So we've got one question in the chat here. Someone's asking, Future Technology says, keen to know about available technologies, open source for cheap and reproducible filament splicing. We know MMU2 and Palette 2 commercial, but do we have competing alternatives? I'm not, and I don't follow the splicing probably as closely as maybe you do, Nick. I'm not a multicolor. I'm more of a use a 3D printer as a tool, not the not for doing a lot of color models. However, color models would be very cool. But I think for me, it's more novelty. I don't really follow that particular thing. How about either one of you? Any knowledge of a third party, like something other than that, maybe an open source project?
I'm not aware of anything. Yeah, I think it's something that's going to come down, but I don't know if that's going to be the way we do multicolor. I think you got things like PolyJet and things like that, and now the resin stuff. I think we're gonna get to a point where that's easier to use, and that's going to be where the multicolor stuff really comes in, where you can use ink to color it on the fly, as opposed to now where you really can't.
With resin is just still so messy.
I think that's going to be it. They're going to find resins that are either less toxic or easier to cure, that kind of stuff. So it's going to be there's going to be some breakthrough there, I'm pretty sure, on that, on that design, essentially.
It would just be, I think it would be helpful if it just wasn't so messy, right?
Yeah.
Where you've got a vat of the chemical and, well, it's basically, growing from the bottom up. As a light projects or whatnot. So, it just seems like a very messy solution and from what I've heard, don't own one, what I've heard, very smelly.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is you don't really want to have it. Like, I'm in a pretty small office here. I would not run one in here. It'd be too many fumes from what I understand. So that's the thing. It's like the toxicity of it is the problem. Just like, back in the day, printing ABS and things like that, you didn't want to have that in the small room with you either. The other thing,
people did.
Yeah, and that's just it. I'm sure, it's, you probably get away with it as long as you weren't just going at it crazy. But I'm sure the resin is in a similar boat. But we'll see. I think that style of printing might take off. We just have to see where it goes. But yeah, as far as quality goes, like it's not even remotely close. Like the amount of detail you can get out of that right now is pretty good. So for people doing models and stuff where they're using it more for the artistic aspect, I think that's more of a doable thing. Whereas, me and you, we're usually using it more from a functional perspective. Yep.
Yeah, we're definitely, we're building printers and other machines with it. That's really our main goal. And Charles here, you're kind of doing the very similar. You're just creating remote control machines, but still machines. But Yeah, so I ran across a video the other day, and it was pretty amazing. I had not seen that polyjet or whatever that is that basically takes the resin and adds the color right to the resin, and it it does it in gradients and everything else. I saw a video for that just the first time. Didn't even know it was a project, but I was like, holy cow! No wonder that Kickstarters, raise so much money. That would just change the entire economy of the way that those small models for gaming and that work. I think the real drawback there, though, comes down to the models, right? We've got a lot of models out there now that are 3D scans. How do you color it? I'm sure someone will come up with some sort of software to be able to do that, but nonetheless doesn't exist today. So even if we had the technology to print in multicolor, I feel like that's still going to be pretty proprietary until people get 3MF or whatever off the ground where color data is in metadata.
But yeah, in the commercial world, this is like every day now. This is normal everyday stuff that you can buy, and it's for a company who needs to be able to make pretty ready to ship prototypes and stuff. It's pretty affordable. So I know Stratasys is a big one that I've seen doing this kind of stuff, and they have a lot of different types of printers. But yeah, it is really like an industrial level thing, and for the most part, like I don't know, at the consumer level, like how often are you going to be doing? It'd be cool if you could print off something full color just like you do your normal paper printer, and it comes out, as detailed as you want. But I think we're still a far way off from that being cheap enough to have at home.
Yep. Well, that's what this unit was supposed to be. Was they had this Kickstarter where someone's got this full, and I don't know, maybe somebody can Google it and put a link in there, but I know there's this Kickstarter that's available, and that's what the video was kind of talking about, where it was completely full color and it was a resin print, and the sample they had on their YouTube channel was absolutely amazing. I was just looking at it and I'm like, wow, that is impressive, but can't imagine having that at the house and being able to just, fire off a print and have that work that way. You know what I mean? It just seemed like, serious future tech, which I'm all for, but it was very interesting to see somebody had gotten that down to a consumer grade model.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Consumer grade can mean a lot of things too. It could still be a $5,000 machine, and they would consider that consumer level because it's not $100,000. So I think that's the thing. Like you're talking about why 3D printing right now is kind of picked up so significantly, and I think it's because you got printers down in the $200-$300 range. And now even on the resin side, that's why that's kind of gaining a little traction. Is now you get the like Elegoo Mars and things like that, where you can pick up a resin printer. It's not huge. It doesn't make big prints, but FDM was that way at the first too. You were getting these printers that only did 100 by 100, and that still cost you like $500. And the bed sucked, and it wasn't heated, and the extruders were terrible, and they were terribly inaccurate. But it's like at the time that was cool. You could actually afford it, and now what we can afford is so much better. You can get some pretty amazing stuff. So resin will probably get even more and more cheap, and then we'll see where that goes as the more complex stuff gets cheaper. Like what can we expect to get at the consumer level? Can we get a thing with the color and all that in it?
Yep. And I've seen I think Da Vinci's the one that's putting it out. They've got a color filament. You basically 3D print, and it's got some sort of like inkjet technology baked into the extruder, because that was always one of the things that I thought would be the easiest way to get a color print, right? Either print in white or use like CMYK filaments and merge them together. Apparently, Da Vinci's got a printer, consumer grade, that you can just buy off the shelf with that sort of technology in it. Now, again, I think it all comes down to those color models where you're going to really be able to make that work for you. But the fact that you can get that in FDM today too is kind of crazy. I wonder if we. Well, I don't want to. I don't want to go surfing the web here, but I'm pretty sure it was like $5,000 or $6,000 for the printer. It was not a cheap printer for sure.
Yeah, and I've seen some like really other neat stuff coming along. There was some company, they had come up with this thing where it rotates inside of like a resin bath, and they use like this like 3D grid of UV light, and it just creates objects within minutes, like, you know, decent sized objects, but it could just do it all like at the same time.
Yeah, it's just picking a focal point for the laser and curing it from the conversion.
But it was really cool, like, because it would just build it like inside out essentially, and it would just like you'd start seeing it come together as it was just turning.
That's pretty crazy. So, yeah.
I've seen some other stuff too.
Saw that video. It was kind of nutso. Yeah, it's very cool. So why don't we talked a little bit about 3D printing. We'll keep shifting back to Charles here in robotics. So Charles, if somebody was going to wanted to get started out with trying to build that project you've got, which is what was the name of it again? I'll try to get a picture up here.
I think on Thingiverse it's Spot Micro, I think is what they have it listed at on Thingiverse.
Yeah.
The Spot Mini, I think, is the if I'm not mistaken, is the full size version's name, and I think they named this one here Spot Micro.
Yeah, that's what I just found that too. So, okay.
Oh yeah, they got a lot of different parts for it. It looks like. Yeah.
Do they have all the code for it too?
If anybody wants to know, this one is, I didn't modify or scale or anything. I just printed out the exact files, and it's approximately about 13 inches long and about that tall. With the legs.
And how long did you say it took you to put it together? Well, how long did the prints take? Because the prints, man, that was big.
It really didn't take, like I said, I probably nonstop. I probably guessed maybe just under a week. But like I said, I was working on it in the evenings as I got off work, not every day. So it probably a little over a month is what it took me to get everything printed. And it has actually has 12 servos in it.
Yeah.
It's got a inertial measurement unit in it. It has the radio transceiver in it, and all that around a Arduino Mega.
Cool.
Oh, I forgot, it does have two of the sonic sensors in the front of it as well for avoidance
the ultrasonic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they have code for it, or do you have to kind of figure that part out?
You pretty much have to figure it out yourself. I haven't found anything. There's a few people that's got them built on YouTube, but they haven't shared their code.
Okay.
So it's pretty much I mean, it's a project you'd have to know a little something about code Arduino. You might get lost out, but
yeah, and I think this goes back. Like, we're gonna start having to do control system stuff and all that.
Right. I mean, the remote control. It's just basic remote control. It runs off of a Arduino Nano, and basic button and joystick functions in the program. I mean, it was pretty simple for it.
Yeah.
So you've just got it. So it's acting more or less just remote control at this point, then.
Right. Well, I haven't had a chance to do any of the coding on the bot itself. The remote is pretty much complete. But I'll actually have two different modes for it. It can either be fully autonomous, where it'll walk on its own and use the avoidance control, or remote control. It'll actually be wrote in the program. I can go either way.
Now, is that something that you'll take to maker fairs and that near you, or?
Yeah, probably so. I haven't really looked at the calendar to see anything close by. I would have loved to went to Murph, but a few other prior engagements, kind of
Sure.
prevented that.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Sean,
that's the intention.
Sean in here is in the chat here is recommending maybe try a USB shield with an Xbox controller and a receiver.
Yeah, and I've
Yeah, if
actually
you're gonna do
seen
something out of the
people
box.
use Xbox because Xbox controllers work off of Bluetooth technology, and I've actually seen people use those as well as PlayStation controllers.
Hmm.
They'll actually dual purpose and just code their Arduino, to accept it. Um, I like this control here because it leaves me open to more options. Um, I'm running the NRF 2401, I think is my transceivers on it. I mean, it's not a whole lot of code to get it set up, and it works for short
Yeah,
distance. It
and
works anyway.
I presume the joysticks you have are probably of much higher quality than those on the Xbox controller, of which I have experience with, and they're terrible.
Yeah, these are actually 3-axis joysticks with a button on them as well.
Cool. Yeah, we the robotics team I work with, we use Xbox controllers just because that's what the kids want to use. And yeah, the dead zones are pretty bad. You only get about 75% of the stick after you kill the dead zone in the middle. So, and even then, it's not terribly accurate. So,
I've actually come across a couple of modules to use the like the Wii nunchuck on an Arduino as well, because it has your same IMU in it, basically the same IMU. It's kind of accelerometer and all that, and a gyro.
yeah.
And it works basically the same way.
Yeah, I've seen people do that stuff too, and it is kind of cool. All that stuff is Bluetooth now, so you kind of you can just pair it, and they're not as locked in as they used to be. Used to be, if you I know with the PlayStation 3, the controllers on the PlayStation 3, you could kind of hack them a bit to pair to a PC, but out of the box they wouldn't. So they were linked to the PS3 that you had. So actually, if you wanted to take it to your friend's house or whatever, you had to link it to their PS3 instead. So, but someone figured it out eventually. But nowadays they don't care as much.
Back to yours when you got back home.
Yep. Yeah, but now I don't think they care. They cost enough now. They're like $70 for a controller. It's getting kind of out of hand, and quality wise, I don't think they're terribly better than they used to be. Maybe a little bit, but.
So what does it cost? Because I've never built anything robotic at all. So what does it cost to put something like that together? As far as
this one here, including the remote, I may have $40 to $50 in it, less the filament. That's rough guess. That's be pretty close, and most of that's going to be the electronic hardware. Like I said, it has
servos,
an Arduino Mega in it. It has a PWM controller, the IMU that's in it, the sonic sensors. Hardware wise, probably $40 to $50 if you shop right on eBay.
Yeah,
that's not bad. I mean, that's pretty good to have a fully functioning robot. Have you put together, or you, Nick? I've seen these online and they look kind of cool. I've considered building them a couple of times. One of the hexapods. I'm not a robotics guy, so I've seen them and they look really cool, but I have no idea the level of effort for something like that.
I've built one. They're not really hard, and I will show it, but the frame is broke on it. So it had the small hobby servos, the little SG90s. It took like 12 of those servos, and it was actually kind of fun. It's still Arduino based or whatever microcontroller want to use. I'm sure you could probably set up a Raspberry Pi on it to do the same thing.
Yeah, the Raspberry
But
Pi.
for the most part, you can use the STLs to print it out, one of those out yourself.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like people like do those, and then you've got like drones is another big one that people 3D print stuff for.
What
Yeah, I think
were you
there's
saying about the Pi?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying, Raspberry Pi is okay. I think it takes a little bit more monkeying around to get it to work well for that purpose. I think you get, like with the Arduino, you got more, it's built for that kind of thing where, I don't know, the I/O on the Pi, it seems like you got to mess with it a little bit more. And then, the Arduino, cost-wise, is going to run you cheaper typically.
Well, yeah, you can get like a Nano if you wanted. I mean, not a full size one, but like a Nano. Those things are like $2 now. I mean, they're incredibly cheap. I keep them around here because and you gave me a little bit of crap about it because you were like, you use these like ESP8266 and these little Arduino Nanos like Excel worksheets, and I'm like,
you do?
Dude, they're like $2. I can do anything with these things.
Yeah, and that's just it. They're so cheap. I can
program an LED in like 2 seconds with it, and it only cost me $2. I use it for everything.
Yeah, and you can write like simple web servers, APIs out of those things, and they've got enough I/O to do, to connect them to all kinds of stuff.
They got PWM in them. I mean,
yeah,
I dare you to find a product that can do as much as one of those, especially like the ESP8266. For the same price point. I mean, those things are like $3, and they hook to Wi-Fi, and they've got PWM in them. The 32-bit version, which if you want to spend the whopping $10,
yeah, it's not very much more.
Those have touch sensors and hall sensors in them. I mean, not things I'm going to necessarily use, but to have a higher performance and all of the different features that those things offer for a couple of bucks. I mean, geez, if this was 20 years ago, you wouldn't even be able to have that kind of power, let alone those sort of input output. So yeah, I think they're wonderful little devices.
Yeah. Yep. No, and like I said, we use with the robotic stuff we do the competition, so we're kind of limited on what we can use. But they use this thing called the Robo Rio, and it's made by National Instruments. I think they cost like $1,000.
Yikes!
We only have to pay $500, which is still expensive, but
that's still outside my hobbyist budget.
Yeah, we have to use it though because it's part of it's like one of the rules. Everyone uses the same equipment essentially, and it's all sponsored by National Instruments. So, but yeah, so you buy this thing, and it's got a lot of cool stuff, but it's pretty powerful. It's got multiple PWM outs, it's got multiple analogs, digitals. It can drive relays directly. So it's got a lot of the protection circuitry built in too. So it's more than just like, you're not plugging relays right into Arduino. It's got to have all this external componentry to drive it. So it's got a lot of stuff baked in. It does USB, and it's pretty powerful. You can run Java on it. So it's more of the caliber of a Raspberry Pi level device.
So Sean Butler saying that he's got 300 plus in an R2D2 so far, and that's just the dome lights and sounds. So it's interesting, Sean, that you mentioned the R2D2. So at the Elkhorn Maker Faire that we were at over the past weekend, they not only have an entire, I think it's Wisconsin-based. Yeah, it's like MKE R2 is like the group name, but they're an entire group of like droid builders. They build the R2D2s. This one guy has a BB-8, and it actually functions. He 3D printed it, went ahead and did the top and the bottom, works on magnetics, and believe it or not, he's got a remote control, and it just rolls down, and the head kind of does one of these because it is just magnets, but it totally rolls around. It's very cool. It was kind of neat to see it. And I was talking to him about it. And what's very interesting about that particular, that somebody had built that droid, that the BB-8 that they used in the movie didn't do and doesn't work the way his does. So his actually works. The movie ones doesn't actually work. So it was very cool. I thought that was kind of a neat thing. Let's see. Paul has a question here of what would make a heat bed go out. Well, I really can't think of a lot of reasons other than one of the traces or one of the wires got damaged. I mean, most PC board kind, those can end up with the traces broken if they flex or catch something. As far as the aluminum ones, those are usually pretty tough. But unless there was a short inside of it, there's not really a lot that can go wrong with them. They're just a gigantic resistor is really all that they are.
Yeah, the heat bed, like typically if your heat bed's not working, it's a connection issue, either at the bed or at the board. It's pretty rare. Like even if it's pretty hard to scratch them to the point where you can actually break the connection. So I mean it'd be most likely something where the wire came off the board or off the bed or out of the board.
Sean here brings up a good point that it could be a burnt out MOSFET or relay, and that's definitely another case too. So I would definitely troubleshoot the heat bed before you just go out and buy one. It could be the board as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a good thing. Good call, Sean.
Yeah, and a cheap multimeter is your best friend in this case because you can check the different points. You can check the connections at the heat bed itself. You can check them on the board. So
and you and Jesse are way better at troubleshooting circuits than I am. I always go to you guys for it. I'm like, hey, here's my problem. What do I do? I mean, I know enough to get myself in trouble, but you know, even with my background, I don't feel like I could troubleshoot electronics like I can. I could troubleshoot source code all day long, but not as good with a multimeter as you guys.
And once you get to the board, like if you're getting all the way to the board and there's just no voltage there, I mean, it like you said, it could be MOSFET or something like that. So at that point, you're kind of like, well, you just buy a new board, unless you're really comfortable replacing that stuff.
Let's see. We got Robert here saying, I'm having problems with alignment regarding the gantry on the Ender 3 Pro. And I think you had the same problem on yours, Nick, where your gantry was not aligning. And he was saying you really wish he could just get a second Z-stepper. I mean, I guess that's an option. You could certainly dual stepper that.
They sell kits, and they've got stuff you can print as well. And all you have to do is if you buy the stepper and the screw or whatever and the coupler, and then you can print the rest of it.
I mean, I know we both. I ended up tweaking mine. There's that cam bolt that's on the
you just have to tighten
assembly.
that up.
I know I ended up tweaking that a little bit, but if you're Robert, if your Ender 3 is doing one of these, where it's kind of bending like that way, you can straighten that out. It takes a little bit of work, but
play around with the eccentric nuts. Sometimes you have to kind of loosen one side and tighten the other because it may be just it might be pinching, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, mine's been pretty straight. My biggest problem has just been getting the bed level. I've got a little bit of tape on mine to shim up the edges and stuff to make and I've got a piece of glass on top of mine. But yeah, the gantry itself has been okay on mine as far as I know. I've never actually sat there and looked at it with a straight edge, but typically I think the gantries. I haven't noticed a slant in any ways, and I know a lot of people say they have that and they get the second Z, and then all of a sudden, they've got the best prints of their life. But I'm not sure if that's because they took it all apart and put it back together, or if it's more of a So that's my big thing is like, sometimes I just have to go tighten things up a little bit, and then all of a sudden I get really good prints again.
Yeah, and Sean's also pointing out Luke Hetfield's guide, and Jim from the Edge of Tech also did a section of video on that guide as well. So definitely good call-outs as well. There are guides out there that can help you clean that up. I personally, I like my Ender, and it still gives good prints. It's just probably the least used printer in this room, and with the second 301 now the second one I've got down here getting built, be the next prototype. I probably won't be going back to the Ender. It does print nice prints. Matter of fact, my Ender 3, so we'll talk about a little bit of 3D prints here. So this was a really cool vase that just came off the, printed this today. There's a kind of a weird layer line artifact that's in here, which is really weird because it's consistent. I don't know if that's because of the way the print lays out. I bet that's what it is. The angle of the print causes that from the layer
because you've
line.
got.
Yeah, that's what's causing it.
Did you do 0.2?
Huh?
Did
Yeah.
you do it at 0.2?
No,
Yeah.
I think I did this one at 0.1. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's the angle. It's the angle that causes that layer line.
The other thing you got to worry about too, if you did it at 0.1 on the Ender, it doesn't. The microsteps don't come out even on that. So that's the other thing too that you have to be worried about on the if you have the default screw. I actually swapped mine out so I can do everything down to 0.01 resolution or whatever.
So this looks pretty good. So this is in the atomic filament. So this was one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was the difference in quality of filament. So I have here, so this is some gold filament that was that silk shine stuff. I have never been able to get this to print right. Never, ever. I've got a handful of prints that print okay out of this stuff. And I know like Jim on Edge Tech did a whole video on it. And if I take this filament and I shove it in the printer, I guarantee this is not going to adhere right. It's just, I don't know if I got a bad roll of this stuff. Some people swear by this brand. Now, I have another filament by the same brand, which is this one, and it prints okay. I'm not going to say it prints awesome. It's a purple. The print...
Are they both silk?
The print comes out okay. It's got that shiny... This one's got like a glitter in it. But I went ahead and I bought this. This was... a little bit more expensive. This gold glitter one that I just showed you was probably the better part of $10 for a half a kilogram. So maybe $20 a whole roll. Now this stuff was the atomic filament. Now very similar. It's got that silky color. Now I took this filament here and I've printed a number of things in it now. So it's not just one fluke print. I've also got this, and this printed out exceptionally well too. Both of these I threw in the printer, turned it on, no special settings, no. I think I increased the heat just a little bit because the filament was a bit coming out a bit slow. I mean, it was basically starting to, and I was printing it on the Ender, so the extruder you could hear hopping because it wasn't being able to melt the filament. So all of that, and all I did was increase the heat a little bit. Filament prints great. So I thought, okay, well maybe it's a fluke, right? So maybe it's just a matter of that silk PLA or whatever works a little bit better. But I went ahead and did this in the atomic filament, and this is probably one of the best vases I have ever had come off a printer ever. I printed this one on the C201, so slightly different printer, so I know it's got a little bit better quality than the Ender, but this print was amazing, and this color has got like a glitter in it. So both of the prints that I used the premium filament on, I had no problem, stuck to the bed right away, didn't string. I had one of these benders on the printer with some cheap gray Overture filament, which I like. Most of the time the Overture was doing fine for everyday mechanical print. But when I tried printing this bender with it, I got stringing. I threw this bender in there, which was a failed print, but not for anything but bed adhesion on a very, very small arm. But this color, which is silver from Atomic Filament, printed awesome. It just like went down like nothing and had so much better results. So I've never been one personally to go down the road of like, hey, I'm going to spend a lot of money on filament. It's just plastic. There really is something to some of the more premium filaments that give you much, much better performance. And so far, I've found that, I've been using the Atomic Filament. I'm going to try other ones as well. I only reference them because they happen to be in Indiana, and it was very easy for me to order something and get it like the next day. So that's where I was looking to start, was somebody that was close by. But otherwise, I think it's really amazing that these filaments and these prints come out so much better from just changing up the filament. I know people talk about that a lot, but until you really start to use a roll of the more premium stuff, you have no idea what you've been missing. And I thought Hatchbox was good, right? Because I've used that, and I got good quality out of Hatchbox, and people swear that it's good filament. But I went with that next tier, that more premium. I mean, it was $30 for the roll of filament. So when you're paying $30 a roll, I expected a little bit better, but I didn't expect to be like, now I'm seriously considering never buying other than this type of filament. I'm sure I will buy other filament, but not necessarily, the bargain bin, because that's where I usually shop on Amazon. I usually look for something under $15 if I can find it. I mean, whatever the cheapest garbage is, I can shove through the printer. And Nick, you had a bunch of that problem with. Didn't we get that roll for like $9 or $5? You had nothing but problems with it.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. I think it comes down to what you're using it for. So I think there's probably a place for, it's probably not bad. Like, oh, there's a roll of filament. It's on like some ridiculous sale. It's like normally $15-20 and it's on sale for 10 or 15. So I'm still gonna look for that stuff. But I think for I just want to print something, see if it's going to even work, prototype stuff, right? Because I'm doing a lot of more functional prints. I'm not making models. I'm not doing any of that stuff.
Exactly.
So for me, it's like, because I'm making functional stuff, if there's a few layer lines in it, what have you, I'm not a big deal. Now, when I go to like, okay, I've got the part done, I want to make a nice looking thing, then I think I'm going to invest in more high quality filaments in that case, because if I want it to look nice or it's going to be out, where for people to see, you want to have that more consistent laydown. And yeah, someone just brought up Ziltech, and I've been meaning to buy some of their filaments. The thing that gets me with them, and they're pretty good price. I've heard decent reviews of those as well. So that's another brand I'm going to look at, but they're not too expensive. I think it's only like 15 to 20 a roll, and they've got some pretty cool stuff like glitters rolls and things like that too. And
well,
they got a lot of different
definitely
types.
Put that on my list, because there's that's something I'm trying to do, is try a little bit more variety of printer filaments of stuff that I like. This was the blood diamond colored, so I printed a blood diamond. So, but it's like, this has got like a translucent glittery color to it. I know the cameras, maybe it's going to do it justice.
A little bit.
But that was a color that I happened to see on the on Atomic's website, and I'm like, I'll give this a try. And just surprised. I mean, I printed this. This is a printed in Vase Mode. It's completely hollow. Just printed this diamond in Vase Mode, and it came out brilliant. I mean, no pun intended, being a diamond, but.
I don't know. Does anybody in chat use the rainbow filament from Ziltech? I was thinking of buying some. It's actually pretty decently priced. I just wasn't sure how well it transitioned and things like that. They didn't have any example prints.
Well, while we're waiting to see if somebody answers that, I will tell you my awful rainbow filament story. So one of the filaments you can see here, I printed this cat. No supports, by the way.
Yeah.
No supports, but you can see the color transition here.
Yeah, not much there.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So I went again buying stuff on I don't know why. So this brand, the same one that had the purple filament. It was a 2-pack, half a kilogram of purple, and then as they called it, rainbow, right? So you could see rainbow here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So look at this filament. They call it chameleon, right?
Super dull.
And it's kind of cool. I mean, it's got its own merit. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's like a metallic. It's like a metallic colored filament.
Mm-hmm. But it's just got some pretty dull color. Like there's not a lot of
There's
not a lot of pop there.
There's nothing super bright here, and you can see the transition. I mean, the print came out great. I did this one on the C201 as well, and I think the print. I mean, the harsh light in here is showing more defects.
Oh, they always look worse than camera.
Yeah, I mean this is actually a really, really nice print. It came out and even the head. No supports are needed for this print. This was an Egyptian cat that was on there, but hello. So it was kind of a neat thing to do this filament in. But yeah, I mean, this was rainbow color. So I mean, if you could see here, there are colors and transitions.
There's no rainbow.
Yeah, there's no rainbow here. I'm like, how can you sell? But they call it chameleon. So,
it's like different gradients of gray.
Yeah, it's really awful.
You got purple gray, pink gray.
Filament, right? I mean, it was
yeah.
Oh, $20. I get 2 rolls of stuff with glitter in it and a rainbow one. And hook, line, and sinker. I bought it, and it's awful.
Well, like you said, I think it depends on the results. I mean, if you want something that looks really nice, like if you're printing like something that's going to be sitting out in the open, like vases or vases, however you want to say that.
The purple made it worthwhile. I thought the purple.
Oh yeah, that looks nice.
The purple came out nice. I think that's kind of got a metallic fleck in it. So I think the purple was worth it. They could have just sent me a kilogram of that and not messed with the god awful not rainbow.
Yeah, and I think. And I might start buying more of my filament through people that sell filament. Like, I mean, almost all the filament I bought has been through Amazon, which is nice because I can.
Well, you get filament like tomorrow, right? So I need a roll of black. Well, it's here tomorrow, so there you go.
Well, I think for stuff like that, like if I need black or white or something like that, it's probably still fine to go through there. Because again, if I'm using those colors, it's usually for something that I'm just either going to toss or something that's not that critical, but.
I'm starting to think Amazon is just like McDonald's. Okay, so here's why. So listen to my logic here, but I think Amazon is becoming McDonald's, right? You go there, everybody goes there, nobody wants to admit to going there, right? And then it's bad for you because you're not going to get anything good there, but then you buy it anyhow, and then you're happy with what you got. So it's just like McDonald's.
You can get it really fast though.
And you get it really fast.
You go to a normal restaurant, it takes them like half an hour.
That's right.
Like, so why am I here? I could have been home already.
3 days for my filament. I gotta have it like next day, and it's the McDonald's of retail.
Yep. Yeah. So I think I'll probably buy some rolls of stuff from like Ziltech and check it out. I've heard some good feedback from multiple people now on their stuff, anyways, and so. And it's not that expensive. Like their normal PLA is kind of in the $15, $16 range. And they've got some more specialty stuff that's like under $20 even. So it seems like it's decent quality, but not like break the bank. And then I'm going to go look around for some more cool stuff. Like I bought some carbon fiber stuff and that cost me like $25. I haven't messed with it yet. I'm afraid I want to get my printers all dialed in. Every time I think I got my printers going, it's like something comes up. And so then I never get to the point where I feel comfortable pulling the trigger. I don't want to like mess up 5 prints with the carbon fiber and then I burn through a bunch of it.
Yeah, and Sean's saying here that he's not used a rainbow, but he's used like 6 or 7 other colors and it prints great. And they have electronics. Weren't you buying 3D printer parts from Ziltech? Yep.
Yeah, half my 301 pretty much came from them. So a lot of all my pulleys, my steppers, what else did I buy through them? I did buy my rails, but they have like linear rails. What else did I buy? I bought a bunch of stuff from them, like the rails and my power supply I got from Banggood, and then I bought a bunch of stuff on Amazon. And then I bought a bunch of stuff from Ziltech. So those are kind of my 3 suppliers for the printer build. But yeah, they have a bunch of stuff. They got pretty much everything you need to build a printer from top to bottom on their site. So, and they even have kits if you want to build like a hypercube kit or something. They've got kits on there too. So,
well, they need to have the X301 kit.
Yeah.
Is what they need to start selling. So we'll get on that right away. But you know, speaking of which, I did, and maybe I'll grab it here so I can show everybody, including you. So a little background about the X301 printer. So Nick and I have been we're coming up on a year of working on this printer. I mean, it's been, you know, on and off serious work since I want to say like April or May, we started talking about really putting one together. And then during the summer, like May and June, because I went on vacation in June, I think it was June, and you'd taken part of the prototype home and we're messing with it. And so we've been working on this printer for nearly a year. We're down to the 3rd prototype, which I'm currently putting together, and not only putting it together, but right over here. So a little background on that. Originally, we weren't sure how to, we knew when we were developing this printer, we wanted to make sure that we could enclose the electronics in the bottom of the printer. And as we looked at a lot of other printer designs, you saw so many printer designs out there that, you know, took a sheet metal, black sheet metal or whatever, formed it into a box. And we talked about a lot of that, and we really couldn't come up with a good solution. I came up with a solution that used like a metal box, square,
square tubing essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
So just aluminum stock that we could buy. And that worked pretty good. I had an aluminum plate on the bottom, and it was coming out really good. And then it hit me one day. I'm like, what if we just put extrusion around the whole bottom? So I'm going to grab that printer real quick. So Nick, you can tell a little bit more of the story about that. I'm going to grab the printer. But the cool thing about this is that, in my opinion, this 2060 on the bottom looks very badass. So just a second.
So yeah, the other thing about that too is you'll have a lot of places to attach things as well, both inside and outside. So adding new electronics, adding displays, adding, you know, spool holders, camera mounts, all that stuff. There'll be a ton of like attachment points around the bottom for sure, and it encloses it pretty nicely. So I think that's going to be nice to have on the bottom. It won't feel like this box where you have to like custom drill holes or anything like that.
So here we go. So this bottom part of the printer, as you can see here, I'm going to try to set this where you can see it. Right. So that's the 2060. And then I got to go the other way. So you can see, got the whole frame. Top part is open. So this is all done with aluminum extrusion. And matter of fact, I even added some inner strength. Let's see if we can get this on the camera here. You know what I'll do? Hang on.
Got to practice this stuff before.
So you see there?
Okay. Yeah, I've seen those.
These are internal little connectors there that hold the front on and add even more strength to the structure overall. So this frame right now is, I mean, you could literally jump up and down on it. It is that solid.
I don't recommend though.
No, I don't.
It's still aluminum.
Yeah, but it's a very solid machine. I mean, when we're done with this and we do these videos that are coming up, because, you know, I don't know, maybe another month, if that, we start kicking up these videos. But we're very close to getting this last prototype done. And then from there, we'll release the printer. We'll put everything out so people can download and build it themselves. But the really cool thing about it is that from there, we can make improvements. So if we feel like we need a 1.2 or a 1.3, whatever we want to build, we can add that on there. So, and unlike some printer manufacturers like Creality, we will go ahead and make sure that there's a version number of what build you're actually building. So,
yeah,
I hate
keeping track of that stuff. Yeah,
I hate when you get half a printer from God only knows what version. It's 5 behind. I don't have this connector on mine. Oh, we changed that like 6 years ago.
Yeah, they constantly improve, which is it's good and bad, right? Because and sometimes that improvement may not actually be an improvement. They may have actually made a improvement for them. Oh, this part was cheaper.
Yep.
So you buy one, and it's like it's good, and then they cheap out on something on the next round, and the guy you told to go buy one now gets it, and now he has to replace this piece because it's broken or whatever. So I think they do pretty good stuff, but yeah, that thing where they don't really tell you which one you're getting, like at the very least, they should kind of say this is some design version or this date or something, some sort of date, so like when this one was manufactured, so you can kind of keep track of. People could keep track of maybe even externally, like, okay, on this day they added this type of piece, this date they added this type of piece.
Yep.
The different runs.
And that's just so frustrating, especially when you're even using the printer yourself. And I remember when I first got my Ender, I'd go out and look at something. I'm like, wait a minute, mine doesn't look anything like this, or my mount isn't exactly the same as this. So yeah, it was kind of weird at first having different. When you're working with the printer, you expect, hey, it's supposed to be this version, and is what it is. So yeah, it was a bit frustrating.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's just the little bits, the little slight differences. And now they have so many different variations. Like at the Ender 3 Pro, they've had other slight variations of the Ender 3, and they got the Ender 4 or 5.
Yep. And don't get me wrong,
I think the CR10s.
I think Reality is doing good stuff for the 3D printer market and everything else. I think what they're doing is great. It's just, like any other company, they've got to make their sacrifices and, do their process. They have to do what works for them. And I totally get that. It's just from a consumer standpoint, that tends to be a little frustrating, just having that come on the backside of being, hey, this printer is going to be a little bit different, or these instructions are going to be a little bit different, or, whatever. It is a little bit frustrating, but, by the same token, it's got a huge community, and that community really helps itself. So, really, really glad to have an Ender. Matter of fact, I was kind of thinking the other day that I'm like, I built more printers than I bought. So as I was thinking about that, I'm like, what am I missing? Do I need to buy a couple more printers? I'm sure Rebecca is saying, no, you've got enough printers, but I don't think that's actually a thing. So
yeah, no, and I think that's the thing. I think because me and you, we actually enjoy the process of building it and designing it. To some extent, it can get frustrating when you're trying to figure something out and you can't figure out a way to do it, or just you're so busy you can't finish it. But I think to me it's almost more fun building the printer than using the darn thing sometimes, because I can experiment with different things. It's like, maybe I'll play with direct drive today, or because I've heard all kinds of great things about that, or maybe look at this hot end, this is cool. Like, to me, the adventure of 3D printing is almost as fun as using it for other things that I do. And then, like I said, the outside of printing stuff for my printers, including the 301 and just parts for my Ender, I do stuff for the robotics team, here and there, and then I've printed all kinds of like other little trinket stuff. But I'm trying to think of like, what did I do? I've made a few brackets and things like that for certain stuff, but I think I might get more into that. Like, I need to put some shelves in my office. I just moved, so there's really nothing on my walls or anything. So I think that's kind of next is like, okay, I want to put some cool crap up on my wall, and
that's what I'm going to be doing behind me is I thought about it. I'm like, if I just 3D print, because, I got to 3D print it. If I just 3D print some hooks, I can lay some shelving up there and just throw all the prints up there. So
yep. Yeah, and you can like 3D print custom mounts for your you got all your tools up there, so like you can make little stuff. I'm gonna put some pegboard in my my closet back here too. So
There's you know what? So speaking of pegboard, IKEA makes that like slotted pegboard. So
Okay, yeah.
when I put this stuff together here, I just, I'm old school, right? I'm retro,
Mhm.
so I just got pegboard, right? But that new slotted stuff, when I was looking on like Thingiverse, there's a lot of models out there. And matter of fact, I would even say there's more models
Yeah.
for that slotted pegboard, which when I was
Interesting.
comparing the models, they look like they're easier to print than the traditional pegboard models, because all the pegboard ones seem to have some sort of overhang component to it, or
Mm.
they're very, very flat, just like wire ones. So I was looking at it, and I'm like, wow, that's actually kind of slick that they've got, this other type of pegboard, and it actually looks better. So,
Cool.
hey,
Oh,
Atomic Filament, how
Atomic
are
Filament came
you?
by.
We were just talking about this awesome print. We're just look at this. That is a phenomenal print, my friends. Was reached out to Atomic Filament, was letting them know that we were doing it tonight and talking about their filament. So the only one I don't think I've tested. Well, I've got two I haven't tested. I had this gray one show up here. The silver of my failed Benchy looks pretty good. I thought that was kind of
Yeah.
nice. The other one I haven't tried out, aside from the gray, is the carbon fiber. That is still sitting in the back box and not opened yet. I want to.
Oh, did you get that from them too?
Yeah, well, and this is the part that I don't know. And Atomic Filament, don't take this personally. They put it on the website that it's milled carbon fiber. Now I don't know if that's marketing, could be, but it sounds like it's better. So I bought the marketing. It sounds like it was better than carbon fiber dust, which is what they said a lot of other vendors use. Now, not familiar with it, not familiar with the process, so just my own ignorance. But I said, well, milled sounds better, so bought their carbon fiber. It was a little bit more expensive, but not more expensive, not that much more in comparison to, say, somebody else's more premium carbon fiber filament. So either way, I was ordering it from them because they're in Indiana, they're right down the road, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna order from you guys because you're close by. And I've heard their name before, so I definitely ordered it. The other question I have, aside from the milled carbon fiber, is what is with them including gummy bears in every shipment? I got gummy bear. They send you gummy bears along with your shipment. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it's a sweet deal. I don't know. The puns can go on
I
forever,
feel
but
like Yeah, I feel like that's a 3D printer thing. I don't know. It feels like a lot of the big companies, like I know E3D sends, I think they send gummy bears too, if I recall correctly. And like or Big Tree Tech sends the rubber
sends
duckies,
the
which is
rubber
kind of
ducks.
funny.
I got my
Yeah,
army of ducks sitting right up there. You can see them in the background.
yeah. Some people get multiple. I only got one with mine. I was kind of disappointed. So
CW
I got my
3D
little.
says he gets Stroop waffles from another place. Wait, I like those Stroop
Oh
waffles.
yeah, I
Where are you
remember that.
ordering
Yeah,
from?
who is that? Because I've seen people get the Stroop waffles. I can't remember who that was though. Yeah, I think it like definitely a 3D printer thing is like sending little treats or like goofy
I
stuff
like
inside the
Stroop
box.
waffles. Who's got Filament One's got Stroop waffles? Well, somebody's gonna have to up their game because I like Stroop waffles.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I'll take the gummy bears. So, not that I need to eat any.
That's funny. That is funny. So Atomic Filament, if it's not too complex, type in the chat. I would love to know the difference between milled carbon fiber. So all right. So here we'll go through it right now because I would
Yeah, because
love to hear.
it says it's not as brittle, which it would be good because I know that's like the one thing about the carbon fiber stuff is it's strong until it's not. So I think that if this has like the ability to,
I like how you said that.
It's like really strong until it breaks, and then it doesn't like bend, you know. And so like if this stuff has like the same rigidity, but it doesn't have that same issue of maybe being a little more brittle.
So everybody can see what I'm talking about here. So here was the carbon fiber filament, and then as I was reading down here, is this right? Engineering grade PETG resin. I got the PLA, but same thing was on here. U.S. made premium milled carbon fiber, not powder or dust. So presumably that makes it stronger, is what you were saying there, Nick.
That's what it seemed to imply. Yeah. So
So
I mean, that would be good
that's
though.
really the question: is that the benefit? I'm just unsure. Like I said, it's just my my lack of knowledge in the carbon fiber filament.
Oh, okay. So you guys actually,
Oh,
it's not like
see,
a,
this makes more sense now. See, I'm glad that's why we asked the question. Because
yeah,
now
that's
I
actually
know.
useful then. Yeah. So that it's actually like strips of carbon fiber almost as
So
opposed to
it's not
the
just
powder.
dust, it's literally like strands of carbon. See, now I
Yeah.
would have never known that without asking. That's good stuff. That is awesome
Yeah,
stuff
and
to
that
know.
that makes a little sense because it's like the kind of the main benefit of carbon fiber is that kind of it's strong in numbers kind of thing.
Right.
The
And the
the
fact that it would
stranding.
be in a longer strand, obviously that's going to help with the strength of the print overall. So
And give it
thank
more
you, Atomic
flexibility.
Filament, for clearing that up. That is
Okay, that makes sense because that's going to it's going to have more continuous rigidity
sure.
across. So like when you're bending it and things like that. So that's
Once
pretty cool
it
though.
was explained to me, it made all sorts of sense. It was
Yeah,
just not really sure about it. So yeah, I mean, I've got the roll of it here. Hang on a second.
yeah. If you want to get the PETG, it looks like it's on a pretty good sale at the moment. Let's see.
All right. So
Ooh, red spool.
I thought this was so by the way, very class act here, Atomic Filament. I gotta say, the spool, I mean, hey, it could be cardboard, I don't really care. But I thought it was nice and classy looking. So bravo, but this carbon fiber filament, man, that does look sweet.
Yeah, and I'm curious if it'll look kind of different than some of the other ones.
And the other thing I thought that was super nice was included the humidity gauge in here, which I thought was super awesome. And my humidity is definitely low here. They
Yeah,
said
keep that one in
read
your
it
dry box.
lavender. I've got a specially built hot box here, and that actually keeps my filament humidity under 20%. So all of my filament is I'm totally keeping it. It's I keep it along with that's, like I said, I've got that specially built dehumidifying box that I keep all of my good filament in. And with it, I keep that in there, and it's a good second read from the electronic one. But my box was reading just a minute ago like 18% humidity, so it took a while to drive all that humidity out of there. But now that it's out of there, it keeps that very, very dry. So I'm very happy with that box I built. It just took a while for that filament. And if you throw a roll of filament in there, the humidity goes up a little bit as it's trying to dry out that roll, and then it comes back down, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, well, you kind of see it's actually doing what you wanted it to.
Which at first I didn't think it was, but after I kept it running for, I mean, this thing's been running probably 2-3 months. It eventually just baked out all the moisture that there was in the filament. Matter of fact, I had a couple of rolls of filament. And since Atomic's watching, maybe they can answer this question too, because I did not, I've experienced this, and I've been told it varies by manufacturer. Now, I don't know how much truth there is to this. So again, I'm not in the filament making business. But I have run into some filaments where they end up getting brittle. And I think all of us have probably run into a roll of that. Now, I've run into filaments that end up brittle from room temperature and not in a very humid environment, ones that have been kept in bags. And I've been able to there's been a couple that I've been able to get to soften up by removing humidity from, but I hear that PLA as a whole can just get brittle like that, and I don't know what the reason is or what the process is. But I do keep mine in the dry box, and the ones that stay in there do stay a little bit more flexible. But I've had a couple that just ended up getting brittle no matter what, even despite being very climate controlled. Now I think they had special additives in there because one of them was like a semi-fluorescent color. Matter of fact, Nick, you remember that green PLA, that bright green PLA I had, which seemed dry to begin with, but yeah, that
was a pretty cheap roll of stuff, wasn't it?
Yep. It was some pretty cheap filament. And again, admittedly, I've bought so much cheap filament in my life. Until I had bought some atomic filament, I didn't realize what I was missing.
Yeah, and I think like glow in the dark filament, like I've got some that came brittle right out of the box, and from what I understand, that's pretty normal just because
I
of
think
the
you got
additives.
one roll off Amazon for $5. So,
well, the one I bought, I think that was a 3D Slew Tech one that I bought. But I mean, from what I understand, that's pretty common though. It's hard to. Some of the additives definitely change the chemistry quite a bit to where they're harder to print with because of that, and you just have to store them. You have to be more careful with them.
Yep.
Like the silky ones, I've heard like a lot of those, they're a little bit harder to print with. You got to print a little hotter and really slow it down a little bit so they get better adhesion. Otherwise, they can if you go too fast, they don't adhere as well. So, but it all depends. I mean, it seems like we're getting newer and newer filaments all the time. So we're getting all these new companies that are coming up with better ways to produce the new filament with better additives and tweaking the formulas just to get it just right. So it's coming along.
And it seems like just a tremendously competitive market. I mean, it just seems to be getting even worse. The prices and the margin seems to be, and in all reality, when we talk about 3D printer filament, and I talk about cheap filament and I talk about like atomic filament. So like I said, the only reason I'm focusing on atomic filament right now is because I recently just bought like 5 or 6 rolls from these guys. And I've been happy with all of it. So very, very glad to have purchased it. But comparing these different filaments, so the atomic filament, $30, right? But when I'm buying $18 or $19 filament, we're talking about a $10 difference. And I know I personally, I'm like, oh, I'm so cheap. Why do I buy the cheap filament? But in reality, when you talk about $10, I mean, literally lunch can cost me $10, and I'm quibbling over that same $10 for a roll of filament. So, it's just kind of a realization. I'm like, why am I wasting? Life is too short to waste it on cheap filament. You know what I mean? I mean, it was just kind of like that kind of realization.
And the big thing too, I find with like some of the more premium filaments is they just have much more variety. You go to like a place like Atomic, or you go to Protopasta, these kinds of places, they just have way cooler stuff. I mean, you can get the glitter, and the colors are just way more vibrant. They're more exotic, like definitely colors you want to print versus like, oh, here's just some green or like black, white,
green number
blue.
1, red number 2.
Yeah. So when you're talking about cheap filament, like if you try to buy like cheap glitter filament or cheap rainbow filament, you're not going to get anything remotely, good there. It's so, I mean, you're going to pay more for that variety. And it's definitely like, yeah, you definitely get what you pay for a lot of times. And and again, it's the reliability. Like, okay, you could buy that filament, that cheap one today, but tomorrow you buy it, it's garbage.
Like I said,
there's no quality there.
This printed great. This garbage, I still can't get decent prints out of it. I mean, I maybe could get a Vase Mode out of it, but it's strings. It's just, it doesn't adhere.
Well, and I think that's the other thing. It's the consistency between the different varieties too. Like this, you go with Atomic, it's like you buy any one of their filaments, it's probably going to work fine. You go with one of these cheaper ones, maybe they got 1 or 2 colors that are pretty solid, but then their other ones don't have the right formulations. And
you nailed it on the head there. It's the consistency, and that's why I said same cheap manufacturer. I got this rainbow that was not a rainbow. I got this purple, which, came out great, but that's 1 out of 3 of their filaments that came out great. So far, everything I've printed, I printed this with the atomic filament. No stringing. I put it on there. It just printed. It did a great job. And that I think was the consistent part. I put this bender on here. I threw this on the printer. Again, failed print, but right out of the gate, I didn't have to change a setting. I turned it on. It printed awesome. I mean, that in the time alone that I'm not wasting by pulling 3 failed prints off that didn't adhere properly, or putting glue stick on, or whatever fix I may have for a particular filament. That's the real difference for me.
Yeah, and the warping, the cheaper ones tend to warp more, so you get not only bed adhesion issues, you get cracks in your layer lines and things like that. It takes a lot more work, and they're more picky. So again, they're okay for printing stuff you don't really care about, like early prototypes of things, or just brackets that can be kind of kludgy or whatever that no one's going to see.
Yeah.
But I think when you're going to print something that you really want to look nice, I mean, you really need to use something that's a little more consistent. And a lot of the cheaper ones, they've got 0.05 diameter differences, or even worse. So they'll get through the tube or whatever just fine and come out the hot end okay, but you'll get your layers will be all different sizes, so you get a lot more inconsistency there.
Yep. And it looks Atomic saying they put a lot of additives in their PLA that would make it like PLA plus. Yeah, and I agree. I saw the whole PLA plus, and in some cases, so this is interesting. So I'd used, I think it was Salutech black filament. Cheap black filament. Honestly, works great. I had no problems with it ever. When I went to buy a replacement roll, I tried their PLA Plus, and honestly was less happy with it. It really was marketing, which kind of the same reason why I was asking about the milled carbon fiber, because I just don't know if it's marketing hype or something to it. Clearly with milled
it's a different
carbon fiber, there's
process.
a significant difference. But again, I didn't know. So I bought the PLA Plus from Salutech, was not happy with it. Matter of fact, I was so happy when I finally got through the roll, because then I bought something else altogether. So yeah, I mean, it was really, really not good filament. I was not happy with it. There's a global PLA shortage. I believe you, because you do this for a living, but I cannot believe there's a PLA shortage.
Oh, wow.
There's rolls everywhere. It's like I walk outside, I trip over a roll of PLA. It just seems.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see if we can ever get to the point where there might be some sort of
I believe you guys.
Programs.
I'm not in the business, so I just don't know. Wow, that is amazing. There's plants shutting.
Well, is that because of China, then the virus and stuff? Is that why it's kind of a problem at the moment? I presume that's part of it. And so maybe it'll kind of rectify itself once things get back sorted out over there. But we're printing too much. That's what it is.
Well, it may very well be, right? I mean, we're all going to have to switch to PETG now, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I don't know about
demand for eco-friendly cups, utensils, etc. Not enough supply. I see. Wow.
So they're using that for because of the what PLA is. Yeah.
Oh, well, that totally makes sense. But isn't the biodegradability of PLA kind of a little bit of a misnomer? I mean, it is biodegradable, but from what I've heard, again, I'm not in the business, so I don't know. What I've heard is it takes hundreds of years to degrade PLA. Now, I've also seen videos where people put this stuff out on their lawn for a year and it starts, falling apart. But falling apart's not. Warm water, about a week, it turns to dust. That is an experiment.
Oh, it needs heat. Okay.
I will do that. I'm going to give that a try. That sounds like an experiment I need to run down here. See, look at this. Atomic filament, you know, if you guys want, I can send you a link. You guys can just jump on the screen with us and you can chat with us. It'd be so much easier than texting everything. And I think everybody would enjoy it if you're game.
Yeah, or like we could do it next week since we're kind of running half hour left. But yeah, whatever they want.
Yeah, we only got about a half hour left today's show. It's actually been a pretty good show. Talking about a lot of 3D filament and a lot of different things.
It'll be interesting to see like if PLA is getting short. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if PETG starts to move or come into the same price line, because I mean PETG right now isn't that much more expensive than PLA for a lot of basic stuff, and it seems like you're getting a lot more variety there now too, and it's not that it takes a little more heat and stuff, and you need like the all metal hot ends and stuff, but it's
what type of
super difficult
warm water are we talking about? Or like I said, we totally believe you. So the PLA shows real deal and bad. So biodegradable PLA. So what are we talking? Just like 90 degrees water? What type of water temperature are we talking about? I'm just curious because I legitimately am going to set up an experiment now, and I want to not just
well, that's not that hot.
70 Celsius. That's not too bad. Yeah. All right. So 70 Celsius. I'm going to take more than just one brand too. I think that'd be the cool thing is have an experiment where I test the biodegradability of filament across vendors, and I'm curious which PLA dissolves and should dissolve, because all of it should dissolve, right? That's the whole deal. Have that dissolve. I'm really interested in that. I've got to give that a try.
That explains why PLA is really terrible around water.
Yeah. That is super interesting. No, I did not know that. Warm water for about a week. All right, I'm gonna give that a try. That'll be a video coming near you.
What are you gonna heat it with?
I don't know. I'll throw a heater cartridge in the water and
just stick it on one of your printer. Stick it on your ender bed.
I'm not sticking it on the ender bed.
You could even have it. You could have it move the axis back and forth.
Thanks for stopping away here and hanging out with us. 3:26 a.m. Man, that is a road warrior. That is hanging out late.
That's how late I stay up, and then I wake up in the morning and can't think straight.
See, and that's interesting too. That CW3D points out. He's got some PLA in for use in aquarium filter pump impellers, and I've seen a lot of. I've also seen a lot of different aquarium models. Now that's not 70C, obviously, because then we'd be cooking the fish instead of just supporting their habitat. But right. Interesting enough, I've seen a lot of people put those in there. Now, I don't know how long they last. I mean, I see a picture on Thingiverse, but heat accelerates it. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely give it a try, and it'd be interesting if there's different temperatures. And I'm not sure how I want to heat that. I could get a silicone bed and put it on there. But I don't know. I could do something with a heater cartridge too, and just have that warm it up.
Throw it in an old pot.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I have got here. So my daughter does she makes soaps. So she likes to. She's got like a double boiler.
She got the little hot plate.
Yeah, she got that little hot plate. I don't know about running that for
a week,
4 days straight or something, but I'll give it a shot. I got a fire alarm down here, and the fire extinguisher is always right there. So, but yeah, I'm gonna definitely. Oh, C-Dub, great idea. The sous vide. I'm not gonna burn up my sous vide though. I'm not gonna burn mine up. I'll have to get a dedicated sous vide to do that, because if that burns up my sous vide, I'm gonna be very, very upset. But that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, that'd probably be the way to. Yeah, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, we'll get the sous vide.
With the aquarium heaters. If you can get one that'll go up hot enough. I don't know if they'll go 70C though, but if you can get it to like 50 or 60.
Tonight.
Yeah, No, that's the thing. Like, I think there's a lot of cool stuff there. I am curious to see though if PLA is going to get rare. I mean, PETG might have to be the way to go. I definitely hopefully don't have to go back to ABS.
As the words were coming out of your mouth, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, not ABS.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with that. I haven't had to deal with it because we already had PLA and PETG by the time I got into 3D printing. So.
Oh, it's crazy. I can't imagine going back to ABS. I mean, and it's funny that we mentioned ABS because Arcade Classroom. So we have a Discord, a channel Discord, and if you're not hanging out in it, you're missing a lot of fun. All of us are in there, including Boss Hog, C-Dub. So many people hang out in our Discord, and links for it are in the description. But it's really a great place. It's like a huge makerspace. So we all just kind of hang out. We help each other with projects, talk about projects we're working on. But interesting enough, Arcade Classroom, who is a STEM teacher, and we're actually doing a collaboration on a video right now that I'm going to be hopefully wrapping up for next week. She bought a roll of ABS by mistake, and she was in the chat like not even like an hour after she started trying to print with it, asking, what do I do? I bought this by mistake. And end of the day, her solution was, I'm buying the right roll of PLA. I'm not going to mess with the ABS.
You really need the enclosure, especially because of the heat you have to have in the bed. You want to have like a good bed with some insulation on it, plus the enclosure to keep it warm in there, which means, most of these cheaper printers, all of the electronics are bolted right to the printer. So it's like, well, you have to then move those outside and run your cables potentially longer. So the Ender anyways comes with some pretty long cables where you might be able to get away with it. But yeah, ABS, I think, being one of the more original ones, it means a little bit more. Yeah, I agree. I think that's people like the adhesion, especially. You see some people print the ABS, it's like really crazy.
And as Atomic Filaments pointing out, there's a lot of variance in ABS too.
Yeah, you need the enclosure though, because it'll just split layers randomly because they just they cool down too fast and they warp. So actually, when I do my closet thing back here, I'm gonna build like two printer coves, I guess you could call it, and they'll have essentially a way to enclose them. So I'll have a door probably or of some kind on there that I can open, but otherwise they'll be enclosed on the other sides by the closet.
And I mean, ABS has its place. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's got different properties than PLA. It does handle a little bit temperature better than PLA. I mean, you can leave ABS in your car and it's not going to melt. Yeah. I can't do that with PLA in the summer. Otherwise, I just have like odd shaped prints that have suddenly warped and look like melting people. So yeah, I mean, PLA doesn't work for that. PETG does, but my big beef with PETG is just, and maybe it's just the quality of PETG. I guess I'm going to roll from Atomic and find out. But I tend to find PETG really strings a lot, and that it doesn't work as well for high detailed prints. It's great from a functional standpoint. I mean, if I'm printing something that's like a part, I love using PETG for that because it's nice and strong. But when it comes to, I want to do something like this, a lot harder in PETG and a lot more stringing than, something that's more of a functional print.
I think on that one, you might have gotten away with it. I think I printed this little Panther, here. This had like no stringing on it when I printed it. And there was, a ton of support under the legs here. So it prints like this essentially, but it came out really nice. I mean, the supports were a bit of a pain to get off. I essentially had to use an X-Acto knife to cut it away a bit. But once I got it kind of loosened up, I was able to crack it all off in mostly one chunk. So that was the worst part, was getting the supports off. But it came out really nice. And this is like some super cheap PETG that I had bought a while ago. I was going to build a Buster Sword from Final Fantasy, and it was like a 5-section deal, like handle, hilt.
Is that the one you tried printing like 8 times?
Yeah, and the problem I was running into, I'm trying to print it on my Ender, and I was pretty much maxing it out. The day I gave up and said screw it, because I had the handle done, I had the hilt done, and I think I had like the first section done. And I was going to print the second section of the blade, and it layer shifted about 95% into the print. And this is like a 300 mil like slice of this thing. And I just was like, you know what? This is taking too much effort. I didn't want to follow through with it. And then I think at the same time, something like broke with the handle or something in the hilt, like it cracked the connector. So it was a little bit of the model wasn't quite working out. So if I were to, I probably will do one eventually. But, for that, it was pretty simple. It was kind of like, mostly a square. So, there was no really worry about oozing or anything of that sort. But even then, like an enclosure is still pretty good for that stuff.
And Atomic Filament says to try the carbon fiber PET G. So I got to get through the roll of carbon fiber PLA first, but then, I'll definitely give that PET G a try. It's definitely cool. So I've already kind of talked about what I've been printing with lately and what I've been printing. So, Boss Hog, what have you been printing lately? Anything you've been working on in particular?
Actually, I have kind of funny because I was working on a little animatronic head, and I completely run out of filament. How I done that, I do not know, but I did. So I went to the last few rounds on rolls and stuff just to try to get finished, and it didn't happen. But that's usually all I really use. I've got some Ninja Flex that I use at times, but I've got to change my extruder on my ender to a direct drive to be able to print the flexible material. I found out the hard way. You don't do that with a Bowden tube.
Yeah,
it's harder. You don't put Ninja Flex into a Bowden tube. I figured that one out.
You can do it. It's just it's harder for sure.
It's a pain. Yeah, especially if you retract. I think it's like if you don't mind the end product looking a little kludgy, you can keep pushing forward. But never pull back.
I tell you, I think that TPU is a truly underrated filament. I really do.
Cool stuff.
It's very cool in that the properties of it. No matter what you print, if you print something that's got a little bit of solidness to it, like even a washer. I mean, you can print a washer with it, but if I print a print with TPU, I have found it is just remarkably strong. It does stretch a little bit. It goes back to shape. It's just a very, very durable. I mean, if I had to have a like just a solid cube, just an arbitrary example, but if I had a solid cube, I could hit it all day long if it was made out of TPU. A couple of whacks with PLA, and it's going to start cracking. And
it depends on what you need.
It's not designed to take that stress. But I mean, if you develop parts in TPU, they have a surprisingly amazing amount of strength to them when it's solid. I mean, like Vase Mode doesn't work because it's just
that's
way
the cool
flexible.
Thing.
But
you can, you can really control how flexible it is by just changing the infill in the shells and things. So you can really you can create a lot of different types of stuff where it's like this thing has barely any give, but it has enough. Like I printed some feet for the printer. So I could kind of adjust how much I wanted them to compress and reduce vibration by how many shells I was using and things like that.
Yeah, and I did the same with the 301. We put different rubber feet on it. Matter of fact, the 201, I did the same thing. Matter of fact, the 201's feet, the C201's feet, when you download that file, it even says like in the README, print this one in TPU. Because it works great. I mean, you need rubber feet or, they're not rubber obviously, but TPU feet, I love it. It's just a very solid material to work with. And I think it's so underrated because I hear, people talk about PLA and PETG and, ABS. Nobody ever talks about TPU unless they want to make something flexible. So, it's very, very cool. So I think it's a definitely underrated filament.
Don't mind my daughter. She's going to bed.
Nah, no worries. No worries.
But yeah, I've got this like little TPU thing. I tried to make a phone case out of it, but it was a little too flexible. It wasn't thick enough to actually stick to the phone. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff. And with this kind of thing, you could make like, do a dual filament too, because PLA and stuff tends to stick to it fine. I had made a little extruder knob at one point where I started it with the TPU and then did PLA for like the part that connects to the extruder, so it had like a soft grip to it essentially.
Oh yeah, like a rubber feel to it. That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I've not made any parts like that. I know I've made a couple of different things though. It's also got great translucent properties. That's the other thing that I think I like about the TPU, that it's so much different than PLA, is that you can print things and backlight it, and you get far more transparency out of TPU than you would with, let's say clear PLA. I think just because you get more air in the PLA in the sense of like the layer lines, it just doesn't come out nearly as clear. Whereas like the TPU, I've got a small piece here. So this is green. This was some green TPU, and you could really see through it for the most part. I mean, that's pretty translucent compared to, I mean, if this was even a translucent filament, it wouldn't be that clear. Have you used any of this for robotics at all?
No, for the most part, I've printed with PLA. Now, for certain parts like feet or something I need to be kind of grippy, I'll print in NinjaFlex, but for the most part, I hadn't used any TPU yet.
Yeah, and from a strength perspective, so it's funny. This was a Spanner Hands rocket, and the top had gotten pulled off, but I keep it around for one reason. So the top had come off of this because the kids were throwing it around. But what's interesting, so this thing was printed in Vase Mode. It's only one layer thick, and it's super flexible. I love this stuff. But what I find interesting about it is you can see there that little string. So this is printed in Vase Mode, and I use this to illustrate that if you just pull this, not only is the TPU like super strong, but you could unravel the whole print. So when people are, I use this at maker fairs because people are, they don't understand how it can be one long strand. So I pull this apart at the maker fairs, and they see this, and they're like, wow, that really is just one. But even like one thread of this is considerably stronger than, say the same size piece of PLA or PETG. It's just amazing stuff. I really think TPU is underrated.
Yeah, and it's elastic, and that's the thing. Like you can print it thick, and then it's pretty stiff, but it's meant to bend and it's meant to give, and so that's where it's strength. It's always a matter of you've got this competing thing of stiffness versus strength, to some extent, where PETG is kind of at a similar thing where it actually, I think, has a bit more flexibility to it, but which makes it stronger for certain things, but it does have more flexibility. So if you're looking for stiffness, it's not necessarily your go-to thing, but PLA is a little more brittle in that regard, where it'll break more under pressure.
So interesting enough, both Atomic Filament and 3D Printing Llama said print hotter and it won't come apart like this. So that's interesting. I will print it hotter. I will give it a shot. It was extruding fine and printing.
That was
fine.
like an early print too.
Usually the rule is when you're 3D printing is if it's extruding fine and it's printing fine, you don't mess with the temperature. Don't fix what's not broke. So this was printing fine, but I never really considered that maybe it needed to be hotter. But I think to print fine.
The only issue with running hotter too, though, is again you run into the issues of blobbing and things like that and stringing. So that's always my concern. There's that fine line of like hitting that sweet spot of where it extrudes well and it'll still retract well.
Yep. And I think Atomic Filament's trying to point out here definitely that the bond is important too, which absolutely is. But to me, and maybe I'm going to learn something else new here tonight, because Atomic has definitely been very helpful tonight. I don't know how I would test for a better bond other than testing the part through some sort of, stress test.
You'd have to stretch it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for TPU, it's easy, right? I just happen to have a piece here so I can pull it apart. But I'm not sure I could do that with a PLA print or another print easily enough. So I'd be interested to know how I'm getting an optimal smash it, pull it. Sure. I mean, the obvious destruction of the print. But if I'm printing Deadpool, I'm not going to smash this afterwards to see if it's strong enough. So
yeah, I think you got to do it like your calibration stuff.
At.
Do like calibration, because you could make like little cylinders out of TPU and things like that.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Then you just check and see like, is it hot enough where I can't pull the layers apart?
This is really interesting because it's interesting to hear Atomic Filament and all the different suggestions they have, because again, I'm not a filament expert by any means. Would never claim to be one. But it's interesting because just sharing my experience on how to do that. So high gloss is an indicator. So is high gloss as an indicator, is that suggesting that a print should be higher gloss, and does that apply to all filaments or just TPU or just PLA? I mean, I'm sure it would vary on the composition of the filament as well, but
yeah, I mean, there's some filaments that are meant to be more matte, and those ones are more glossy. But yeah, I feel like I've had prints where they come out and they look really dull, even though the filament looks pretty shiny, and I'm always trying to figure out exactly, what I'm doing wrong there. If it's printing too cold or if that's an indication it's too hot. I'm never quite sure. So, but I also, like I said, currently have that hardened steel nozzle, which I need to probably swap out with something that's conducts heat a little better. I'm concerned that I'm just getting terrible prints because of that. It can't transfer the heat to the filament properly. I always have to run a lot hotter than the roll says like 220. I got to print at like 240.
Yeah. And Atomic Filament saying here that dull needs more temp or slower speed, and I think speed is a huge indicator of.
I want more speed.
A lot of. Well, you're the speed demon, right? You want like all your prints to get done in like 5
minutes. I'm trying to
make
functional stuff.
I want something that works and looks nice.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, for me, when I do a print, if it's like 50 millimeters a second or 60 millimeters a second, we're talking about like 15 minutes in a whole print. And in the whole scheme of things, man, I don't care.
Depending on the print, I think there's some things
for 15 minutes.
It definitely helps with, like if you're doing like a big box or something, like the speed can definitely help. But if you're doing anything intricate, the speed is really irrelevant because it's stopping too much.
Yep.
So you don't really get anything, and that's where like the acceleration comes into play. But that's really going to be printer to printer.
And I mean,
I actually accelerate.
Don't get me wrong. The 301 with the linear rails on all of it, that printer, I mean, you can just really crank up the speed. And I find more often than not, the problem I run into is not the speed of the printer. I can make the printer go plenty fast. It's getting the filament to melt properly and get it extruded, because the first problems you run into when you start going too fast, at least from my experience, is that it comes out a little bit cooler. You can see that it's coming out cooler, and it's just not. And eventually, the extruder can't push it through. But yeah, I'm definitely not an advocate of high speed prints. I think that low and slow is the way to go if you want a good quality print.
If you want the quality, and I think that's the difference. It's like it depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you're doing rapid prototyping, sometimes you just want to get it spit out. If it's got a few little, if the outside looks a little rough or whatever, you don't really care. Or if it even looks dull or what have you, that's not your goal. Your goal is to print something and make sure it fits.
Yep.
And then you can always go back later and make the nice, good one that you're actually going to put in there. If you're even going to 3D print the final product, I mean, your 3D print may just be a temporary, okay, it fits. This is what it's going to look like. Hey, give me money to go manufacture the real part. You know, it may just be a means of getting to an end, you know, as far as like just showing, being able to visualize it. Because, you know, when you're trying to sell somebody something, if you can show them what it looks like it's going to look just like this and it's going to work this way. If you can make something functional, you know, it doesn't have to look pretty because you're going to, you know, mill it out of metal or something anyways. So I think in that case, like so the one thing I've always thought, you know, in this whole speed versus temperature thing is I thought it would be cool if there was like a temperature compensation in the firmware. Like, oh, during this part of the print, it's going like 30 or 40, you know, here's my minimum temperature, here's my maximum or whatever. And then it could actually gradient the temperature based on how fast it was currently extruding. So if it was saying going like a 60 mil move, oh, I want to like run a little hotter because I need to transfer heat a little quicker.
I'm not sure that would be practical though. I mean, think about it. Well, the reason why I don't think it would be practical, maybe if it was predictive, but I mean, if you're doing, let's say, and I mean, I hear the idea, but I'm trying to think of it in the sense of making the rubber meet the road, right? So if I'm doing an outer wall at 40, let's say we're doing the outer shell at 40, and then we're going to switch to infill, and the infill, let's say we want to do it 70 or 80. Now that's probably a bit fast, and you're going to end up with, you know, stringing if you're not extruding it at a higher temp. In that particular case, when you switch, how are you going to get your nozzle up 5 degrees?
Yeah, I hear you.
Switching from one to the other. I just don't see that happening. I just mechanically, I couldn't imagine it getting that hot that quick. I mean, I'd be all for it because my nozzle would be hot in a couple of seconds when I turn the printer on, but I just can't see it working between layers.
Yeah, and a timer film mentioned like the long melt zones, things like the volcano. Like if you want to go faster, like you just need it needs to melt over a longer period of time. So that it has time. It's already ready to go before it hits the nozzle.
Interesting enough, I think and I know this sounds crazy, but my experience has been that the volcanoes tend to drip less than, you know, and ooze out less filament than a regular standard size nozzle. It just doesn't seem to do. I mean, if you leave it on long enough, it will ooze, but I noticed
print cooler.
It ooze as much, surprisingly, which you'd think would be the opposite effect with a longer melt chamber.
Yeah, I think you can run a bit cooler with that because it does have the longer melt area, so it's able to heat it up as it goes, as opposed to like right at the end. But.
Yep. No, I definitely have loved the volcano nozzle using that. It just, you know.
It has its use case.
It does, and it's much more consistent printing than shorter nozzles. It just seems to work much better with that longer melt zone.
You're also printing thicker layers too, typically. So I don't know. You used it probably. What did you use it with? Like a 0.8?
I've used it with the Scara arm here, testing that out, and
okay.
I've also had it in 201 as well.
So, well, what size nozzle though was kind of what I was getting at.
Oh, well, you know, I've used it on the 0.4, but I've also put like 0.8 nozzles in there. So it's nice if you want to do a bigger print to, you know, have a melt zone that can support the filament you're putting through it.
Yeah. What did I do with I was going to show you my little gear that I made for that pencil sharpener.
Did you finally get it printed?
I have one that's printed in like this bronze PLA.
So the story about the gear is that so Nick and I have worked together now probably like 7 years, 8 years. So we've been working together a long time. He had this pencil sharpener completely disassembled on his desk. And I'm like, what are you doing?
At work.
Like, fixing a pencil sharpener. And I'm like, it's never going to get fixed. So every day that I passed his desk, I asked him about that pencil sharpener. And it's been disassembled for like what feels like at least 6 months. And I keep bugging him to print the gear that it's for it. He's like, oh, I'm going to work on it, blah, blah, blah. Never works on it. So
I got it printed. I just haven't brought it into work to test it yet. But I think I'll probably have to print it in something a little stronger than the PLA. Just the gear teeth are like pretty thin. So I'm worried that if I just put this in there with PLA, it'll just rip all the gear teeth off because the other gear is metal.
Yeah, it was never going to get fit. Matter of fact, I think he took it off his desk and put it away. I think
it's on the
so I
bottom
would
shelf.
stop asking about the pencil sharpener.
Yeah, we had some visitors in the office. You know, I had to clean up my desk a little bit. So, but yeah,
Sure,
no, that's on the
let's say
docket.
it was that.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't working anyway, so you know, whether it's apart or together, it didn't matter.
That's pretty awesome. Well, I've got some atomic carbon fiber filament if you want to put that into your gear there. It doesn't look very big. I could bring you a strand about this long and it'd probably print that gear.
Yeah, it's not very. It doesn't take much, and you gotta go pretty slow because it's quite precise. And then, I mean, this is just 0.4 nozzle, you know. So I mean, I was surprised. Like it's not perfect, but I was surprised, and I modeled this up myself, based on the original gear, which actually is here. So I mean, you can kind of compare. That definitely needs a little bit of work, but
it looks pretty close.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing. Like, there's a bit of an angle to it on the gear, so it was like trying to figure out what that was fun.
Did you use a gear tool in Fusion or something?
Yeah. So I modeled it in Fusion. I used what was it? I found some plugin that someone had made. It doesn't come with it, but I did find one that'll make gears, and specifically that type of gear, which was what was that kind of gear? Let me see if I can find it real quick.
I'm curious to hear about this gear because that's the one thing that I've not found like good software for in Fusion is how to make good gears.
There was like a spur gear plugin, and that supported doing the angled offsets, I believe. If that was the right one. Yeah, that's got to be the right one because I don't have another one. So that must have been what it was. But yeah, I found a plugin where the guy he made it specifically for making those type of gears, with the angled gearing.
That is very cool.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, without that though, it would have been like super hard. I did try to like manually use there is like the gear one built in. I tried to use that and twist it, and it just none of that was really working out. So I'm glad someone had made something like that because. You know, and as far as I know, it's just some Python programming and stuff that you use to write those plugins. So there's a lot of cool stuff out there.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yep.
Well, we're coming up on the last few minutes here. Boss Hog, any last words here?
Nick, you say you work with robotics with kids and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I sent you look at your Discord. I sent you a picture. That's my next project.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
That's life size humanoid.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty cool.
Hang on, I'll
is that you 3D print all that as well, or is that done another way?
Yes, everything. It has from top to bottom. Has like 28 servos in it.
Wow, okay.
Everything is Arduino based, and everything is 3D printed, with the exception of mounting hardware, you know, nuts and bolts and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's all 100% 3D printed.
Cool.
Yeah. Now they've actually got a couple of.
Yeah.
So you're building that there. Is that your?
That'll be my next big one. Yeah.
That's crazy. Do you have an idea of how long that's going to take you to build?
Several hours. There's actually a YouTube channel I've been following. This guy's actually building one, and because as modular as they made everything, you know, to where you can actually print most of the stuff, with the exception of the legs. You can print most everything on a printer the size of the Ender 3. Because the way they model the pieces with dovetail connections where they just snap together.
Okay.
I mean, it's actually, you know, kind of cool the way they designed it. You don't have to have a big build platform to print it. More or less just got to have the time to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, it's funny because at one point when the Ender and stuff was around, like a 200 mil, you know, build area is pretty big, you know, if you go back a few years. But nowadays it seems almost small now that the 300 mil stuff's becoming a little more common. But even in
Yeah.
your like your more popular printers, like a 200 mil bed is kind of on the big side.
Yeah, I'm actually waiting on some extrusion to come in because for my big printer build, I've got all the most everything printed that is parts that is 3D printed. I'm just waiting on extrusion to come so I can start assembling. But it's actually 1,000 by 1,000.
Wow,
Yeah.
Which
that's a
well, the
big
frame
build.
is. By the time I get the bed in there and everything, it'll probably be 800 to 900 build plate, which be more than anything that I'll ever need for
Yeah,
now.
no joke. Yeah, and that's the thing with a build plate that big, you can make some of these, bigger pieces, without having to break them up into smaller chunks. You can make, more full pieces.
It's funny,
Right.
you and I were talking, Nick. I've got that idea to make that really obnoxiously large build surface.
Oh yeah.
So I still have to test that out, but I got to get this 301 built here and videos out
Yeah.
for that. But
That's the thing, like there's different printers.
build.
Yeah, different printers for different purposes. I think there's always like, man, you got your large format, and as long as you got a use case for it, I think, go for it,
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. I've
That's
actually
the first question you have to ask yourself is, what are you going to do with it? And that's the type of printer you need to build.
Exactly.
right, and I've actually weighed the option of going more of a CNC style build where the gantry and all that moves across the build plate instead of the build plate itself moving.
Hmm.
I've thought about that, and I'm kind of entertaining that idea. I kind of like the idea of that. No,
Yeah,
just
I think
build basically like a CNC, but with 3D print.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think at that size you kind of do. You don't want the bed moving around because that's going to be a pretty heavy piece of aluminum at that point.
Well,
moving
right.
around. So.
You got also the whole problem with belts and whether or not you're going to go belt or screw drive. It does represent a whole bunch of challenges. Now I think they're all solvable, but it does make a look. Slinging a big bed like that is crazy.
Yeah, were you thinking of doing screws on the X and Y, or
mine?
or was it going to be? Yeah.
I haven't decided if I'm gonna design like a rack and pinion.
Okay. That's the other way to do it.
I'm gonna go with lead screws. I haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
It's mainly going to depend on the finance part.
Yeah. Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see with the rack and pinion driving that with the steppers and stuff. You have to get a pretty accurate thing there. So yeah, no, that sounds cool though. I think that's the thing in the big printer space. It's there's all kinds of stuff you can do in that space that you can't do with the smaller ones. You can really It's a lot more of a mechanical challenge than the electrical challenge of the smaller ones. Because we're looking for super precision, but on the big one, it's like, well, gosh, we just have to find something that'll actually work.
Right.
Very cool. All right. Well, go ahead.
I've actually thought about the idea of making the gantry a bit wider than the main frame itself, and go dual nozzle on it.
Mm. Especially with a bed that big.
Just a little bit more, material for the gantry to be wider than the bed. So
yeah, might as well.
It's a thought I hadn't. Like I said, I've got a bunch of extrusion coming. Yeah, it's just a matter of what I come up with once I get to that point.
Yeah, well, keep us up to date. Yeah, I know everyone puts their pictures and stuff in there.
I'm sure you will be hanging out in the Discord. So, Boss Hog here, Nick, he also goes by Mechius in our Discord, and also myself. We are all in our channel Discord, and that Makers Mashup Discord is really just a great maker space for everybody to ask questions, and it doesn't matter about what. 3D printers, electronic CNC. There's tons of people in there that really know their stuff and really good professionals. So if you've got questions on projects, it's a great place to hang out. Looks like we're at our 2-hour mark here. So I definitely want to thank Atomic Filament, who I did not expect to stop by tonight. Thank you guys so much for coming by. And gosh, I got a real education on filament tonight. There's a lot of really good stuff there I did not know, and now I feel so much more educated about a lot of things about 3D printer filament. So yeah, I mean, that was great. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight. That was very nice of you guys to spend your evening with us. So do appreciate that. Make sure you guys go check out Atomic Filament if you haven't. Like I said, I'm on my 5th roll. I bought it every single roll with my own money. No discounts, no nothing. It's good stuff. So, well, I always like to call that out because I don't want to recommend a product if or say it's decent if I've not used it and tested it out. So I'm not I'm not like that. That's not what we're about here. So
that's my big thing. Yep, always gotta test stuff.
Gotta make sure it's good stuff. So it's all paid for. So thanks again, everybody, for hanging out tonight. We're going to call it the end of our stream here. If you're not a subscriber to the channel, make sure you click that subscribe button and that bell so you get notifications. And other than that, our next Tech Talk will be 2 weeks from tonight. We do these every 2 weeks. That gives us plenty of time. And if you want to talk to any of us in the meantime, you can always do that through our channel Discord. So I want to say thanks again for watching, everyone, tonight. And we will see you guys next time.